Belinda and HarperAudio Australia present this unabridged recording of Trick of the Light, written by Fiona Mccallum and read by Jennifer Vuletic. The dedication reads, "In memory of my dad, to whom I owe my courage, resilience, and tenacity." Prologue. Erica arranged slices of buttered date loaf on a plate and placed it on the coffee table. She'd got up early to bake, despite there still being plenty of other offerings in the freezer from Stuart's wake 10 days earlier. Having something to focus on that wasn't her sadness and the great gaping hole in her life was important, even though baking, like so many other everyday tasks, was also a horrible reminder that life just carried on, regardless of the assault on normality she had just endured. When she let her mind go there, Erica tried hard to not think too deeply about anything much, because no one thought ever completely stood alone. Most things were connected, with one idle ponderance linking to or prompting another. Before grief, thoughts and memories tied together had been comfortable and comforting. She longed for the occasional isolated memory, a single grain of sand, but instead got pulled into quicksand, the darkness and drag of which took a lot of effort to resist. Today, she hoped baking from scratch, instead of taking out some cake and watching it defrost on the bench, would distract from the quicksand. And she would have watched, because all too often lately she was having to drag her attention away from something after losing chunks of time staring mindlessly. Erica wished there were only so many tears a person could shed. Her bouts left her wrecked, completely exhausted, as if they'd been wrung from her, like someone had put a hand around her top and her bottom sections and twisted in opposite directions to painfully extract every last drop. She longed to laugh properly again with her girls and reminisce without eventually dissolving into tears, and actually be strong without pretending or working so hard to be. They'd get there. It would happen. She had to believe that. She'd also thought grief would be easier this time around, having lost her mother 6 years before and her brother many more years before that. Though that was different, because she'd been a kid and didn't think she'd properly understood or processed it. Even now. With her mum, it had taken her a good, or bad really, 2 years to not burst into tears whenever her father, a dear old soul battling dementia, uttered her mother's name. And it only twisted the knife that he still didn't realize she'd departed, and relayed memories and chattered to whoever happened to be beside him as if that person were his wife, or as if she had just popped off to the loo or the kitchen to get another cuppa. She was thankful he wasn't as upset as she was, but Christ, it hurt. Physically. It was a deep punch into her side on top of the all-over ache that was already there as another appendage. She thought, hoped, the practice she'd already had would help. But it didn't. If anything, it was harder, more painful. And she didn't think it had anything to do with the fact that Stuart hadn't had a long life, or that he'd had a lot more living and contributing to do. No, Erica found her grief compounded. Thoughts of her mother sometimes set her off now as strongly as thoughts of Stuart, gone just days before. Not even the fact she'd had time with Stuart to say goodbye, come to terms with it, helped. Those callous enough to suggest someone dying of cancer, slowly, was easier to deal with than sudden loss were wrong. Well, in her case, anyway. Regardless of the fact she truly hadn't believed he'd die, had thought he would get through this like the previous 2 episodes, she'd thought it a matter of staying positive. She hadn't sat beside him acknowledging his prognosis and offering final words. Though, what did you say? Some things you only could say to the dead, not the living. And they hadn't been a very gushy, emotionally or physically demonstrative couple anyway. Yes, they were strong and supportive, said I love you, held hands occasionally.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?